everybody, it's Ros from North Mayo Fine Art. In today's video I want to show you how you can use different embossing tools and different tools that you have around the house to create highlights in your work. For example, white fur, any little highlights that you need and you want to keep or want to create before you apply the colour. So this is a traditional embossing tool, and I have a set of 3 of these, and they're all double-ended and they all come with varying sizes of ends. But for this tutorial and for most of my drawings that I do, I use this smallest end here. So that's a traditional embossing tool. But you can also use a very small crochet hook. This one is a 2.5mm one. You can use a very sharp white pencil, doesn't matter which brand. You can use a pair of tweezers, and you can also use a safety pin or an embroidery needle, something that's got a slightly thicker point to it than a normal needle would have. So I'm going to show you one by one how to create embossed lines that you can apply before applying colour, which will then keep the highlights in place. So I'm going to start with my traditional embossing tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a basic effect of whiskers just so that you can actually see how it works. But you can apply this to anything that you want to apply it to for your drawings. So I'm going to, first of all, just flick with my embossing tool. And I'm using a good amount of pressure here. And as you can see, that's made some really nice embossed lines in the paper. So now I'm going to do the next one, which is my crochet hook. And this will make slightly bigger lines due to the fact that the actual head of the crochet hook is slightly bigger, but it's still very good as an embossing tool. So again, I'm going to come in and I'm going to push down, and I'm going to make the impression of whiskers. Obviously, I would take an awful lot more time if I was going to draw whiskers. So that's the embossing tool. The next one I'm going to show you is the white pencil. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to push down again. You want to burnish the white pencil into the paper for this technique, and this has a two-way effect, because not only are you burnishing the line, the embossed line, into the paper, but you're also including a layer of the white coloured pencil. Therefore you are creating a double effect. So that's the coloured pencil. So we're now going to move on to the tweezers. And for the tweezers, I'm just going to use one of the actual ends. I'm not going to use them both together. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to, again, do the very basic impression of whiskers, like that. So that's the tweezers. And the last one that I'm going to show you for this part is the safety pin. So again, I'm going to hold it so that the pin part is closest to the paper, and I'm going to I'm actually going to do it the other way around. You have to be quite careful with the safety pin because it can rip the paper, which you don't particularly want. But if you're careful about how you actually use it and how you create the lines, it can be really quite effective. So as you can see, I've come along and I've changed my angle slightly. As you can see, it's actually ripped quite a lot there. But but I've changed the angle slightly down here and it's given a much smoother effect. So now I've actually embossed the lines using all 5 of the different tools. I'm going to come over and I'm going to use a black pencil. This happens to be my Polychromos black, but you can use, obviously you'll be using the colours that you'd be using in your drawing, and it works just as well for any colour, but I just wanted to use the black to make it very obvious, the results. So I'm going to go over the first one, which is the traditional embossing tool. And I'm using a light hand, and I'm going over it like this. And as you can see, as soon as you go over, the coloured pencil adheres to the paper, but not to the embossed line, because the embossed line has been etched into the paper. So we're going over the paper, but it's not actually going into the groove that we've created with the embossing tool. So now we're going to move on to the second one, which is the crochet hook. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to go over with the pencil. I'm using a fairly light hand here. I'm not pushing down, I'm not applying too much pressure. And as you can see, the lines are slightly thicker because the crochet hook head was bigger than the embossing tool, but you can still use it for an awful lot of techniques, and sometimes you want a slightly thicker line. So now we're going to move on to the white pencil, and as I said before, this is going to have a two-tone effect, because not only have we actually etched a line into the paper, we've also put a layer of the white colour down, so that will resist the pencil as well. So we're going to come over with, again, with a light hand. And as you can see, it's worked nicely for that. Now you can see at the very bottom of those lines, where it hasn't embossed it quite so much, it's still resisting the colour. A little bit of the black has gone over it, but it's very, very easy to get that back off just with the, say for example, the Tombow eraser. So that's the white pencil. So now we're going to come over here, and this is the one that we use with the tweezers. And I'm going to go over this line here, this area. As you can see, that's worked really nicely as well. There we go. And this one is the one that we did with the safety pin. So I'm going to go over this first of all, which is where I did the pencil, where I did the pin, and it actually rips the paper. And as you can see, that is actually adhering to the paper more where we've ripped the paper. This one, we've actually got the rips of the paper at the top, and then the embossed lines at the bottom. So if I go over this one, and although it's not what I wanted, it actually does show you quite well. You can just about make out the lines. And this one is the one where I changed direction slightly. So I'm going to go over here now. And you can see that the lines are extremely thin. But it is another tool that you can use for embossing. As you can see, those lines are definitely there. They're an awful lot thinner than the others, but they are there. So I want to show you now a way to create a very similar effect, but reversing the process. So what I'm going to do first is apply some colour onto the paper. Like so. And there's two tools that I will use for this technique, which is a blade. This is a box cutter, but you can use a much smaller scalpel if you'd rather use that. And again, I am going to use my safety pin. So first of all, I'm going to start with the blade. And the way I like to use the blade is have it at a slight angle. So hold it almost like you'd hold a pencil. And then what you're going to do is actually come up very gently, and you're actually taking the colour back off the paper, as you can see there. Now you are manipulating the top of the paper, so do be aware of the fact that you are actually touching the paper as well. It will lift some of the actual paper off and it won't leave it as smooth as it originally was. But this is a technique for actually taking colour back off, like so. And then I want to show you the safety pin as well. Here's a safety pin, and I'm going to again hold this at a slight angle, and I'm going to very, very carefully go up the colour. And you can see this is also taking some of the paper off. But if you just wanted to get some very, very small little highlights, you can see if I actually make the colour slightly darker, let's get my black pencil back. If I do an area that is particularly dark, again I don't want to particularly burnish the paper, so I'm using light hand and just going over and over the area. So you can see that this area now is particularly dark. It's a lot darker than the rest of them. Now if I wanted to make almost little flecks of highlights, say you have a particularly dark area and you wanted to make a little fleck of a highlight, but you wanted it to be very, very narrow and just a hint of it, I would use the safety pin. And I would come in and I would just flick very carefully. And it doesn't actually matter which direction you do it in. Do be careful because you are actually lifting up some of the paper, so the paper will, again, won't be as smooth as it was when it started. But as you can see, you can make quite an interesting effect using the safety pin. And then you can make, again, a different effect with the blade. So there's two different ways of doing it. I personally prefer to put my lines down first and then apply whichever colour I'm using over the top. But you can do it the other way as long as you're pretty careful, because you wouldn't want to spend all your time applying the colour and layer and layer and layer and then use this technique and ruin the paper. But it is actually quite a useful technique if you just want to get little tiny areas of detail off. So there is my mini tutorial on how to use embossing tools. I hope you found this useful. If you are interested in seeing any more of my work, please head over to North Mayo Fine Art on Facebook and like my page. If you would like to get involved in my draw along that I'm holding on my Facebook group, head over to North Mayo Fine Art Drawing Techniques and request to join, and either myself or one of the moderators will accept you. If you want to see any of my work, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest and Twitter just by searching for North Mayo Fine Art. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.